WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting Wiseye to 44321.
Suzanne Campbell from Wisconsin Rapids is the Democratic candidate for the 72nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Suzanne Campbell, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for participating in our candidate interview. May I ask you, what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
That is such a great question. And I think it's something that candidates have to ask themselves over and over and over as they campaign. And my campaign is about learning, understanding, and serving the needs of the people in my district. I've had this great chance to talk to a lot of people as I've campaigned, and they're so excited to see this campaign as it's going on. And I have to always remind myself, I'm a good person, I do good things, but it's not about me. It's about what they're looking for, and that's hope to be heard and hope to have their needs met.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
There are so many priorities that will help Wisconsinites across the state to live better lives. And there are a couple immediately when I heard this question that came to mind. Number one priority for me, maybe obvious for me, would be making sure that reproductive health care is a priority and that we can restore Roe and make sure that our citizens have the access to that kind of care. Another one that I think not a lot of people are talking about is to expand the access to non-discrimination based on gender identity, and it's something that a lot of people are not paying attention to. But I'm the mother of a queer non-binary kid, and it's incredibly consequential to know that my kid doesn't have the same protections in a lot of areas, in hiring, in healthcare, in so many areas that we take for granted. So that would be a priority for me as well.
So if you're elected to the Assembly, you're entering during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have over a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
A surplus is an exciting thing to have, and I think it gives us a lot of exciting opportunities. And one of those opportunities is to look at extending tax cuts to the middle class, because I believe that does a lot of good for our communities, and that money circulates into those communities, and it helps rebuild and shore up some of the things that perhaps we've lost since 2020.
Do you have a second priority for that $3 billion?
Yeah, there's a lot that's underfunded right now, a lot of really consequential programs, education, healthcare, and there is a lot of good that we can do with adding funds to some of the good we're already doing in the state.
You mentioned education as a priority, K-12 education, clearly a key issue for many voters. What would be your focus in the area of K-12 education?
Yeah, what is wonderful about the K-12 education that we have now in the state is that we have incredibly talented teachers, administrators, and support staff. We have kids eager to learn. And what we need to do with that is to make sure that we're funding those public schools. Right now we have a situation where our public schools have to go to referendum too much. And that puts a drain on the staff, that puts a drain on administration. It creates confusion in the taxpayers' minds. We need to reform that funding model, and we need to make sure the investments are being made where they need to be, which is to make sure our kids are getting the education they need for our future.
What about Wisconsin's higher education system? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. What does the future of that system look like to you, and where should the legislature be focusing?
Yeah, great. I am a huge proponent for these 2-year colleges. Without a 2-year college, I wouldn't have been able to earn my degree as a single mom. And I'm also fortunate enough to be able to sit on one of the advisory councils for a mid-state technical college. So these are both programs that I have seen really personally, and they do so much good in our communities. And again, it's about funding. Our university system is one of the largest employers in the state. It creates community wherever it lives, and the funds need to go to these institutions to make sure that not just that we are educating the students that are there, but that we're thinking about the future workforce, because that is what's going to educate, upskill, and create families in the areas that those colleges exist.
Do you support an increase in funding for the Universities of Wisconsin system?
I absolutely do.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
Oh, that is an excellent, there's so many good questions. I think what I hear the most is this mass migration away from the state, that students and even people who we aren't traditionally thinking of, these kids that are coming up through high school and going to college and then leaving, older folks are getting upskilled and they're leaving the state because they're not seeing the opportunity here for growth and for promotion. So I think that is a massive concern for our workforce. We need to find ways, and it's a complex problem. There's no simple answer to it because it involves building community. It involves creating this concept of a third place so that people are feeling holistically supported in the areas that they live.
So do you see some tangible thing that the state can do, that the legislature can do there?
I really honestly believe we can, because we can support programs that shore up all of these different things. We can support education. We can support Main Street programs. There are so many good places that funding could go that would build that kind of community.
I have a couple more workforce questions
Sure.
for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is another thing that makes our communities stronger. And when we see gaps in those skills, we need to be making sure that we're upskilling our residents so that they can fill those jobs.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I was not aware of the breadth of this issue. It's certainly something we've heard about for a long time, and thinking about employers, out-of-state employers like Uber, and some of those that have done this similar sort of thing. And it's incredibly consequential because it creates this unfair playing field, and it hurts the workers. Ultimately, it hurts the companies, even the companies that feel they're saving money now. There's no way to retain good quality employees if what you're doing is cutting out funding of those good employees.
So is there a role for the state in this situation?
I believe so. I believe that what the state needs to do is ensure that our employment laws protect the employees.
Housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control, building more rentals, or some other solution?
Yeah, I truly believe that it's dependent on the area. I think that there are some areas where the cost of rent has gotten way out of line, and so establishing control on that rent could be a good solution. I also, thinking specifically about my area in the Wisconsin Rapids area and around there, I haven't obviously done a full feasibility study, but what I see is that we have empty buildings and we have places where with some work, with some innovation, with some creativity, we might be able to repurpose some of those buildings and make them good housing that's affordable for people. And that's truly what we need, is affordable housing.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Yeah, look, the very first thing we need to talk about is the fact that we've left Medicaid money on the table since 2014. There are over $1 billion that our state could be spending to help ensure that our residents have health care. And that money would be going to fund employees and hospitals. And it's not the full solution, but it is certainly something, first steps, low-hanging fruit that we should be considering.
Do you support increasing Medicaid reimbursement rates for hospitals?
I do.
What about mental health care? Growing concern for many Wisconsinites, a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on that issue in your district, and what are some solutions? Yeah, mental health care is it's certainly something that's on people's minds, and I think that it becomes wrapped up in the complexities with service and access to that health care, and also understanding fundamentally what types of health care people need. So I think it's terrifically complicated, but there are certainly solutions. Mental health care can be treated in the same way that our physical health care, and it just needs to be addressed that way. And some of the stigma needs to be eliminated so that we are dealing with mental health care on the right level. So you support increased resources for mental health to counties or in other areas? Yes, absolutely. I think that is a great place to start. I think it's resources, it is, I'm a marketer, so I believe that it is communication. I believe that there is a lot that can be done to really help people. How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion? You started talking about that. What does that look like specifically? Yeah, this is perhaps a controversial take, but I believe that anti-abortion is anti-women, and it is a decision that is consequential not just to the individual woman, to her family, to her community, to everyone around her. And I think that the only recourse is to restore Roe, make sure that we enshrine abortion protection in our Constitution, and that is our path forward. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce? Yeah, two big things that I see in my area. Number one, we are, I believe, entirely without public transportation. And that, that comes back to issues around workforce, and it really creates more complexities for people because without public transportation, there are a lot of people who can't work reliably, can't get their kids to daycare. There's just a lot that can be done in regards to public transportation. Our roads are also a major concern, and not just because they're aging, but because of the way climate is affecting our roads. We have the roads, really in between, specifically the one that I think of is in between Wisconsin Rapids and Stevens Point. And we just have areas when it gets too hot that explode. And that
that is speaking to our inability to think future forward and create the sorts of infrastructure that we need for the climate that we have today.
Speaking of the climate, the environment, PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
It's an incredibly important issue, and it's affecting people right now, not just in our area, but certainly in our area, but across the state. And it requires a multi-pronged solution. We have these contaminants in the water, and we need to focus. We need to hold industry accountable to create programs, to do research and development, to abate what is currently in the water, and then push them even further to hold them accountable to stop that kind of contamination.
We are down to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Yeah, just as we have heard many people say in this election cycle, I believe there's more that unifies us than divides us. I believe that my opponent and I both care really deeply about our area. I truly respect the volunteer opportunities that he so publicly does. I think he's a good role model there. But the major differences, I believe, between myself and my opponent are that my focus is on hearing what people have to say and what their needs are, and then translating those needs into action. So he's represented us for a good long time. And as someone who has been his constituent, I don't feel represented. I've expressed my needs, and I don't feel any action on them. So that's my commitment to my hopefully future constituents, that I will hear them and that I will work to turn what they need into action.
Well, final question for you. Let's say you're elected this fall. You get a magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings people and parties together. What is that issue?
Good question. I do want that magic wand so badly.
We'll work on that.
Excellent. Good. If I could get a magic wand, I'm going to cheat on your question, and I'm going to say that magic wand would create one beautiful legislative session where everyone is working across the aisle, where there's bipartisan support to do everything that we can to improve the lives for the people in Wisconsin. It has been too divisive for too long. Things have stalled. Things that could really substantially benefit the people across the state have been stalled for too long. So give me the magic wand. Let's make that go away, and let's get people working together in Madison.
All right. Thank you, Suzanne Campbell from Wisconsin Rapids, the Democratic candidate for the 72nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Suzanne Campbell, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.